Whoops. I forgot to add myself to my own stream. Sorry about that. Please let me know if it echoes. I had a surprising discovery of why my voice was roboting all this time, thanks to Bluetooth headphones. Right. It's a bit of an impromptu live stream, so I'm not really scripted. However, I felt there were some pressing matters, and I couldn't sit by any longer. Um, Watching, hearing people, feeling, well, imagining what I would have, imagining what they might be going through and how they might be feeling, and it, it hurts. It hurts hearing people suffering and in pain. And many of you know I have a daughter, and I look to her. And she's autistic, and every now and again, I try and have a philosophical conversation with her. And I'm looking at her wondering what kind of future is she going to have? What kind of life will she have? Will she be all right? What will happen if I'm not around? Is she going to cope? Is she going to have a good life and things like that? And so it's important for me as her father to speak to her in a way that reaches her core, that reaches her soul. And for me, this is what gives me a sense of security in hopefully knowing that if she carries these lessons deep within, that she'll be all right, come what may. And I think she's going to be okay. Um, but obviously, she still needs tuition, and it's good to have these close bonds and heartfelt conversations with her. And in some ways, the way I speak to many people online is something similar. I don't particularly want to label myself as a father to people listening or insinuate that somehow people are my children. But there is still this parentifying type of way of trying to communicate ideas and thoughts and expressions and things like that. It serves as a handy way of trying to educate. So, be it a parental figure or be it a kind of teacher or sorts, because to be a parent in many ways is like being a teacher. So they kind of closely link. But anyway, to the more crux of the situation here, from what I am seeing and what I am observing, because I spend a lot of time observing and listening and feeling. And again, with an autistic child, a lot her communication is difficult. So a lot of it I have to kind of read the signs, feel the vibe, feel the atmosphere in the room, um, observe body language and things like that to try and get insights, to try and identify different things going on. And identifying and insight are two separate things. They're not the same. And this is partly why I try to be as careful as I can be with my choice of words to make sure there is a clear line of communication, a direct, um, and it's not misinterpreted. Because as we should already kind of realize that many people's problems are misinterpretations and believing they don't know how to deal with a situation or a problem or an issue. So we're going to be looking at themes of overall self-parenting in this conversation. and we'll be tying in things like codependency, learned helplessness, victimhood. However, I don't actually want to really get into the psychology of it on this occasion. So just try to bear it in mind as we go through, and tie it all together. Because a lot of it is it's like cooking in a way. The ingredients on their own don't really make the dish. It's when it comes together and how they come together that really matter. And with that, you don't necessarily have to be strict with the quantities of the ingredients you put in your mixture. A lot of it comes with the loving care of, I don't know, let's say you're making bread. It's the hands, the involvement of the creator manipulating the ingredients that also play a heavy part in the final product. That's why you get the expression of like, nothing beats a home cooked meal. There's something about home that makes it taste that much better. And home isn't really an actual ingredient, but yet plays a huge part. So greetings to everyone in the chat. Angler, great to see you. Chrome Dome, Indy, I see you're in here. Thank you, gentlemen. Jim, good to see you. You guys are saying hi to each other. That's fantastic. Good. Mother's here somewhere. I see people talking about Mother. I don't see you, Mother, but seems like you're in here. Oh yes, I do see you. Good, Mother. Good to see you. So let's begin with what I think we can all sense. Maybe we can't quite contextualize exactly what's going on. We can sort of explore a little bit. People seem to do that. But let's try to classify it a bit better. Well, in a more abstract way, kind of bit of a contradiction there. So I'm guessing we can all agree, we all share the sentiment that the world is increasingly becoming darker. It's a darkness of despair, of desperation. There are more and more lost people, or lost souls, more and more confusion. Anxiety is skyrocketing. Doesn't seem to be much hope. There's a lot more dreaming, wishing for a better way or a better life or a world that could be. So there's the hope of that, but at the same time, a hopelessness that it will never come to surpass. It's unattainable. It's a happiness that people are longing for desperately, and it's increasingly fleeting and escaping their grasp, which understandably makes people feel in more desperation, more despair. It kind of it brings you back to your place of a feeling of torment. And so for many people, I believe that life is increasingly becoming torturous. And these are sad. I mean, these are sad sentiments. This is a very sad way of looking at life. If my kid was talking to me like that, it would bring me to tears. So how do we change this perception, or how can we address the situation, or what can we do with this? And I believe perhaps the first place would be then. Oh, I've got banners. Hold on. Banners, right. Let hope of being saved die. This hope of a dream. We don't want to be living in a dream. We want to be on earth in reality. It might be painful, it might be hard, but this is part of life. You can't have the good without the bad. And so if you were given the wish of living in paradise, of utopia, of this dream, you wouldn't really know if you were even alive. So it's something really, if you're honest with yourself, you shouldn't really want. It's an idealization, it's a fantasy, it's wishful thinking of a child's notion. It's an infantile way of looking at life. Now, it's not the hardships or the pain necessarily that's the problem. It's the ability to be able to deal with it, how to cope with it, how to manage it. That is where the fear is kicking in. So someone who has a more mature outlook, or there's a maturity around with them, will understand that yes, there may be hard times ahead, and they might not know what these hard times are, but they have the confidence in themselves to see it through. And then we start, so this is knocking in the area of having some confidence, having some esteem, trust in yourself, trust in your own abilities, some resilience and things like this. So we shouldn't really be frightened of what the future holds. Maybe it might, the world might blow up in flames, and maybe whatever disaster might happen. It shouldn't really matter, but as long as you've lived with your purpose and enjoyed life while it's still here with you and things like that, made the most of it, not looking for doom and gloom. You're counting your blessings. You have your gratitude and your appreciation. Then even if life is cut short, it's a good life. It's a better life. Excuse me. It's a better life than living many, many years in fear of what could be. So we need to be a bit careful with some of these ideas and notions that we unfortunately let occupy our minds and float around in our thoughts. And for some of you who are having trouble sleeping, I mean, these could be some of those thoughts right there. And yes, it will stop you from sleeping. So when there's a trust in yourself and appreciation, and it's not just appreciating I'm talking about with like other people, and you appreciate having a roof over you. No, you appreciate having you as well, being born in your body, even if you have disabilities like myself. I'm a diabetic, and I've never really looked after my condition all that well. So I have complications, and I'm pretty sure it's cut a few good years of my life. But in a funny kind of way, I appreciate being diabetic. It's taught me a lot of things that I don't think I would have learned or realized had I not been. It's a funny one, because sometimes I think if someone offered me a cure, would I take it? Well, yes, more than likely I would. But it doesn't take away from the experience of having it, of having the illness. And you can see with that, when I think back to my daughter, even more. I mean, those are my kind of anxieties and fears of the future. But I can't allow myself, as her father, her primary care giver, to allow those kind of thoughts to consume me. I'd be doing a disservice to her if I were. And I wouldn't be as good as a father as I could be if I'm using these illnesses and problems in life as a reason to not then live. And of course, yes, obviously I should take better care of myself. And as I'm getting older, funny thing is, as you're getting older, I think it's quite common with diabetics, they become more sensitive to their condition being out of control. Like their tolerance levels aren't as good. So I'm better than I've ever been. It's just I could be better still. I could tighten up my control over it. There's still room for improvement. So I'm not coming from a place of holier than thou. I understand and I can relate to many people who have problems with their motivation and their self-esteem and feeling, down in the dirt and gutters and aches and pains and wondering what's it all for, what's the meaning of life and things like that. That kind of philosophy is something I often think about. I often wonder myself, what's the meaning of life? Who am I? Am I even real? What do I matter? What does it all matter? And things like that. I guess with the amount of time I spent thinking about those ideas, it's not so unknown to me as it once were. I'm more comfortable with the idea of nihilism, for example. Actual nihilism, not this silly misconception of doomer gloomer. I see it much more as a positive. Which brings us on to the idea of this perception where we look at our issues and problems. If you focus on it being pain and miserable, guess what you're going to end up with? Guess what your focus is. However, if you can somehow see it in a different way, you might be surprised. And you might find it kind of humorous or amusing how quirky, how ironic life can be, how paradoxical humans can be in our nature. It's like we fear the worst so much that we end up embracing it wholeheartedly, and in that way we can then feel justified as if we were right because ultimately we fear being wrong. And so one of the lessons I teach my daughter is it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to lose. Actually, it's a good thing. You can have bad winners and you can have good losers. So learn how to lose. It's an important, the mistakes we make, we already know this, the mistakes we make help teach us. So let hope of being saved die. I don't know. It's quite it's a hard one to let go of, isn't it? Because it puts you in a place that you're not familiar with, the unknown, the uncomfortable. Like a child, we're scared of the dark. We're scared of what could be. But if ever we're going to overcome our fears, that is the direction that we need to be exploring. And when we understand our fears better, what we're hesitant about, what we delude ourselves over, and deep down we know we are doing it, we'll have cop-out answers or excuses why we won't do something. But we know we're basically bullshitting ourselves. Other people are doing it. And we find some flimsy reason, typically, of not seeing it through. And it's as we continue this conversation, it'll be understandable why we do that, and why we can be passed off with such a flimsy reason. We don't really need to have an ironclad, fundamental excuse, for a lack of a better word, why we can't do something. We'll quickly drop the idea of taking a self-accountability or responsibility given the slightest of chance, because we don't have appreciation for ourselves. We don't have respect for ourselves. This is the low self-esteem. We don't feel like we deserve to have a good enough reason not to do something. So we'll accept a half-baked idea. Oh, I can't do something because today is Thursday. Something silly like that. And we wait with the idea that when the stars align, when the climate is right, when the mood is, just so, then somehow the golden path will be available to us, and then we'll be able to reach this hope that we were waiting for. But are the stars going to align in your favor? Of course not. Are the clouds going to part way? Why do we need to even wait for these things to happen? So these are the silly little stories and ideas that occupy our minds, and then we wonder why is it we can't stop? Why can't we stop thinking? Why is my mind always ruminating? It's because it's busy doing these mental gymnastics. Anyway, so if we are going to move forward in life and in the world, we're going to need to grow with that understanding. It's one thing to be learning, to be getting the insight or information, to be experienced, and the opportunities to meet people. That's great. Make sure there's some growth in that equation, that who you're becoming or who you are now isn't the same person you once was. And so with that, of the hope of this, the idea of letting hope die, this idea of a future dream, to see it for what it is, an illusion, a wishful sentiment that is created from your fantasy, your ideals. I tell you something about unicorns. Unicorns are real. They're real in your fantasy. And so if you were to meet a unicorn, like the idea of this sort of unicorn woman, for example, she'll be a manifestation of your imagination. She won't be the true woman that is before you. You will have a warped way of looking at her because you want to see her as a unicorn. But anyway, so this idea of this future fantasy, la la land, let that go. Don't be afraid of the unknown future. In fact, it should be looked at with excitement. Isn't this an adventure? We are going into the unknown. This is going to be awesome. Can't wait to see what happens, good or bad. It's going to be better than being stuck doing nothing. And with that, you also have to let go of what's going on in the past. And that's another crutch of this idea of hope. You hold on to the future and you hold on to the past simultaneously, hoping that you'll be balanced in some way in the present. Well, if you're going to let go of the idea of this idealized future, you're going to have to let go of some of these past, again, storytelling that you've been holding on to for a sense of identity, value, and purpose. So where does that leave you? It leaves you in a place of more unknown. You have no past, and it's a bit hard to see in a linear kind of way what was before and what is to become. Yes, it can be very daunting being in the middle with nothing to lean on for support. But this is why, as we go through this conversation, you realize, hopefully, that this is the time to be standing on your own 2 feet, maybe for the first time, and to feel the weight, to move with your own steam power for your own purpose, instead of trying to place yourself, trying to sacrifice yourself for either other people or for this narrative. You realize it doesn't really, the narrative isn't going to give you the quality of life that you're longing for. And hopefully you would realize that the past doesn't necessarily make you who you are today. And so by holding on to the past in a death grip like manner, it prevents you from growth. It prevents you from moving on. You can't, like a heavy stone in your pocket or something like that, you can't really travel very far carrying all this weight. And at some point you're going to need to get rid of that heavy stone. Take a look at it, understand it, say thank you for the stone, but say, your purpose has, your time has served its purpose or whatever, and now it's time to put it down on the floor. So this is where we would begin, because at this stage, from a psychological point of view, if we acknowledge that in all likelihood there isn't really a sense of self at this stage, for many people lost in the oblivion of reality, or whatever, however you want to phrase it, then we're yet to discover who we really are. And that's why one of my little catchphrases early on was, who we are, we're yet to know. In some ways, I'm yet to know. But it's not, again, it's not something to be frightened of. It should be looked at with excitement. But it's understandable we might not quite be there yet. So where do we begin? We begin first of stopping the lies, stopping the denial, and the delusion. For me personally, the denial was probably my starting point. I mean, I could not stand the idea of lying to myself, no matter how much I wanted to. And so I generally work from a process of deduction or elimination, because it's kind of funny. Like, there's a part of me that would love to be a dreamer, that would love to be wrong. I too grew up with low self-esteem. My parents never really appreciated anything I'd done, never any achievements or accomplishments. They dismissed it and found flaws with it. And my brother was the golden child, was wonderful. Could never make a mistake, even though he was making mistakes. And so I couldn't understand it for the life of me. And I still carry that conditioning to this day. And this is going to be another area we'll get into a little bit later on, but where you recognize, once you start to know thyself and you recognize your own flaws and limitations, your own handicaps or whatever, you can factor them in. But for the purposes of where we're at in this conversation right now, so I have a tendency to want to be wrong, because I don't like the idea of being right myself. But when I test all the ideas out and I deduct them, and I'm left with what I'm left with as a conclusion or a verdict or a judgment or something like that, I'm a disbelief probably just as much as anyone else. But at the same time, I just can't stand denial. I can't stand lying to myself and trying to pretend, especially now, that I'm wrong, or it's wrong, or what I'm seeing isn't right. So denial, be aware of it, and and the lies you enjoy listening to. It might be hard to see them right now, so you need to start being more honest with yourself. And to be honest, we're going to have some recurring ideas being brought up, but to be honest with yourself, you're going to need to have some respect for yourself. You're going to need to have some esteem. You're going to have to start saying no to certain things. So it's good to see everyone continuing to say hi to each other in the chat. I'm just reading some of the comments here, seeing if there's any particular things I need to. I see Jim is saying, my one cousin's son is on the spectrum. I presume you're talking about autism. More and more people are becoming autistic. My suspicion with autism is it matches up very well with narcissism. However, one of the key differences, the narcissist will blame everyone else, whereas the autistic tends to blame themselves, which is very sad and unfortunate. But on paper, they share the same kind of, both have problems with boundaries, both have emotional regulation problems, both have grandiosity, both have a fixated sort of mind, etc. Both have emotional literacy. And so the way I see it now, they normally say that autism is a learning difficulty, which is, but so is a narcissist. However, the narcissism is categorized as a survival mechanism, a defense mechanism, which makes me believe autism is it's kind of like modern era survival. And so we see many autistic people in a bubble-like state in a world of their own, seemingly trying to survive. Okay. I'm just addressing some comments before we move on a little bit. Peterson's second rule, be precise. Sorry, Jim, I'm not sure what that is referring to. In the video game Skyrim, if you get married, it has several perks, one of which is a home-cooked meal, which offers perks of its own. Yeah, everyone's going to be hungry now. People have become brittle, like glass, in my butthole opinion. Yes, I can see that, and I agree. This bubble of protection is very fragile, and this is why there's that other type of narcissism, the fragile narcissist. They can't afford the slightest threat or disturbance to their perfect bubble. And this is the danger that, see, this is what happens if you put your hope into a idealized paradise perfection dream of a world where you become the center and the world is revolving around you. The slightest shimmer and it's a catastrophe. So we let that kind of stuff go, and we learn to have better acceptance. Okay, let's move on to the next point. I think I've covered that idea of hope. Right. So, actually, there is a couple more things I want to say about this idea of hope. I want to yet again bring up what happened in my story, in my awakening or whatever, my red pill, because it's relevant, and I don't know if everyone's heard it. But the point I wanted to make, maybe when I said it before in the past, maybe I didn't underline it enough. when when things were being flipped upside down and I was being dropped in a world of hurt and confusion, and I didn't know exactly what was going on, what my ex-partner was scheming, what she was up to. All I knew, the only stability I had in my life was looking at my daughter, because obviously she wasn't trying to trick me and she wasn't being disingenuous, and her schooling was maintained, so that was that was my security at that point in time. I couldn't trust my own family. I couldn't trust my ex and her family. My friends didn't want to listen. The school didn't really want to. They were confused. They couldn't believe it. Doctors didn't want to know. Therapists didn't want to know. You know, so I had no one to rely on. No one I could trust or confide in other than my daughter. And obviously, being a young girl at the time, she was 5 years old. Obviously, I can't exactly confide in her. Like what on earth is going on? And at the same time, I had to try and protect her mentally and not let her know that life is turbulent. But the reason why I bring this up is because if not for a switch at some point, and I can't exactly pinpoint when this happened, but like a switch went off in my head when I came to the realization, like, if I sit by complacent and do nothing and continue allowed being fobbed off with these feeble excuses, which I knew that I was being lied to, but like a simp, I was going, oh, okay, I believe you. But I knew it was bullshit. But if I continued that kind of mentality or twiddling my thumbs, these people were going to kill me. Maybe in a metaphorical kind of way, but they were going to try and destroy me. They were going to take my daughter away and punish me and torture me as much as possible, to the point where, self-deletion was entering my mind. And I knew that's what they wanted. And it was when that kind of realization of, like, I have to do something now. It's survivalistic. That is when the beast awoke. That's when the killer instinct, in a way, fight or flight, or fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And from fawning, I decided, fuck this, I have to fight. If I don't, it's game over. So I don't know what kind of words of motivation I can share with you, brothers, but you need to have that realization that if you're complacent, you become neglectful. They'll take an inch, they'll take a mile. They will destroy you. They will kill you. And you must have that survivalistic urge to fight back. Not like a wild, ballistic animal out of control. No, you need to keep your cool, but you need to have that little switch in your head that says, no, this is going to stop. This is going to stop. And so you don't let that pain be for nothing. You must begin to strategize. You must take stock. You must start to make plans. Even if you're not too sure what these plans are, start to become proactive. First of all, you decide, well, I'm not going to sit around and waste my time twiddling my thumbs anymore. We're going to keep things on the low. We don't want to arouse suspicion, but we're not going to be placid or passive and let things happen to us. I'll be damned. And so we must strategize. Move your plans into action. One way you could look at this is to put out feelers, to get the ball rolling, to get multiple balls rolling. And again, in my story arc, this is how I turn the tides. because my ex and her family, they thought they had me under control. They thought they had me contained. They thought I was a broken mess, weak, feeble, impotent, like I was a pushover. I was already defeated. They had no idea that the resistance, that the fight to survive had already begun. And so that's when I started to, right, number one, where is my legal position in all of this? Even that I wasn't I'm too sure, but at least I started to investigate. Right, what can I do about the school situation? Okay, probably best idea to inform the school what's going on. Right, what am I going to do about the doctors? Probably best make an appointment then. Okay. And so suddenly you can imagine your schedule starts to fill up. And if you're trying to keep it on the down low while playing possum with people who are hell-bent playing games, and you start to, obviously your mind will be racing with so many thought patterns. You start trying to think from their point of view, what are they up to? And in my situation, I realized that each of these family members, they were keeping lies with each other. So I knew at some point down the road, I could use that to my advantage. It means they weren't really organized. It means different members of the family knew only certain things. So I kept that in my back pocket. And this is part of strategizing, knowing what you have right now, what's within your locus of control that you can deal with, what might be useful in the future, and to begin to work out when you might pull those jokers out of your sleeve, when would be a good time for it, kind of thing. And I was right, there was a good time to, what's the expression, to play these family members against themselves. But at that moment, that wasn't the right time to do it. I had to continue to play possum. I had to continue to knowingly take punishment. And because of a low self-esteem, many of you probably have a high tolerance to pain. And a lot of these abusers has elected you because of this ability. They know that you can take pain. And they know to ease that pain onto you, to build your tolerance up. And this is partly why you need to have that kill switch in your brain. Because without something catastrophic suddenly happening, like that needs immediate call to action, there's a good chance with your tolerance to pain, you'll just sit by and let it happen to you. And that's what I was doing for a long time, until I had that moment where I realized I can't carry on like this. These people are going to destroy me. They're going to take my daughter, and that is going to kill me. I can't let that happen. So this is another area of when you start taking your life back in your hands, the control, you realize, you start to work out how you've been conditioned, what are your limitations. So you recognize that you have a good degree of pain tolerance. That might sound like a cool thing to have, but it's actually a devastating condition to have. And this is why they build your tolerance. It's kind of funny. They sometimes talk about these narcissistic relationships, and they talk about the survivors, at least anyway, that the abuse they've endured during the relationship is almost like training for the big day of the fight, of the end, when it's all going to go down and you're going to break away and get your freedom. So all that relationship, all that conditioning was training. And I could see that. All these memories and flashbacks were coming back to me, and I was like, now I understand why I was being treated like that, and this happened and that happened, and why that was said to me. So, and as you have these epiphanies, again, these are kept in your back pocket. You don't need to necessarily be using them right now. So we're at a stage of strategizing, taking stock, having our awakening moments, having our self-reflections. I mean, obviously this is going to be a crazy sort of haywire of a stage in someone's freedom. And don't be mistaken, this is fighting for your freedom. This is fighting for life. You know, especially if you're coming from an abusive background. It is boss battle, yeah, Jim, boss battle. Yeah, it is. We're going to battle. Yes. Yes, very much. And you know, you're going to be one man. So how are you going to strategize your defenses? How can you watch your back while you're busy doing other things? And I don't know exactly with people's situations, you know, but like in my, I can only give you how I dealt with my situation. So for me to see the doctors, for me to check my legal options and things like that, I would do this during my child's school time. And obviously my partner would be away at work and messing around in the evenings. And I'm just thinking, so even if you might not necessarily be aware of what you're doing or how things, the procedure, what matters fundamentally is, is if there is a will, there is a way mentality. And if not, we goddamn make one. When you have, when the stakes are against you and your survival mode is kicking in, it's do or die, basically. So it's a bit easy. Like here I had a blessing in a way because I had a lack of sense of self. I wasn't fighting for me, and this is where I was fortunate. I said before in the past, it's my kid. My daughter saved my life. If not for her, I wouldn't have bothered fight. So I had to fight for her. That was my purpose. That was my reason. And on that basis, nothing was going to stop me. Nothing. There's just no way. I could not see. Go back to what I was saying about deducting all possibilities and options and things like that. This was something I could not see any other way. I was going to have to fight this or die in the process. I must win. Not for, I say not for my sake. Yes, actually, in honesty, it was for my sake. But this is that codependency sort of talk. I use my daughter as the excuse here and say I did it for her. But really what I'm saying is that without my daughter, I would not have enough. I wouldn't have a sense of, I don't have my own self-esteem to be doing it for myself. So we were tied in. And it's not fair that I had to use her in that way. And I've said before again, like she would have to, she had seen, she's carried the tears of a grown man on her shoulders at the age of 5, with my life in her hands in a way. How unfair that is on anyone, let alone your own child, daughter. So it's something I'm not proud of, and I feel bad about that. However, by the way, I also mentioned about playing possum because I didn't want to reveal my cards immediately. There was also a realization that it wasn't just me playing possum. I was dragging my kid along for the ride as well. So I knew at some point in the near future I was going to have to make a stand. I realized that at some point I'm going to have to confront my enemy, my ex, the mother of my child, and say enough is enough. No, that I had to blow my cover. I wasn't sure when that would be, but and I recognized that the longer I let it play out, the more I'm dragging my kid through it. So it was pain for both me and my daughter, but it had to be a pain that was worth. Like, I wasn't ready yet to fight back. I wasn't ready for this confrontation. My strategic plan wasn't formulated like an ironclad plan yet. Think kind of like chess. You want to get a checkmate, so you don't rely on one strategy. You try and be flexible, adaptive, malleable, and you might have a few different angles of attack, and you need to be ready to switch on a dime if need be. Falcon Black, salute, brother. Good to see you. So the clock was ticking. I knew at some point soon I would have to put a stop to this, but I wasn't quite ready. So when is when? When do I do this? And again, it's something I'm not proud of, that I had to put my daughter in a situation where she was going to have to endure this pain for a little longer. But we use that as motivation to work out a plan. And this is probably roughly when I was deciding, yes, I could start using her other family members to either buy me time, or to cause confusion, or to cause one to expose the other. When one family member, for example, this was a good move. When one family member decided to butt into the situation, so they emailed me saying that they've been observing, hoping that me and the ex would work things out. And to his disappointment, he's saying, like, he was telling me how childish I was being. And he tried to threaten me with jail, saying that I was the one harming my daughter, which was preposterous. But, it's a preposterous accusation, but it still frightened me, because I wasn't exactly legally clued up. So I was like, crikey, am I in trouble here? Am I gonna, what could happen? Am I gonna have an investigation or what? So I decided to use my ex. Instead of her attacking me, I said, right, you're gonna have to keep your brother on a leash, because he's gonna get you into big trouble. He is threatening me with jail. That's not gonna exactly look good. So you're gonna have to he's getting in the way of your parental responsibilities, and he's making it worse for you. So you're gonna have to shut your own brother up. And this is her older brother, so I don't know what she would have said to him. But so we can see now so this is triangulation, basically. This is using their own dirty tactics against them. But when you're in a situation like that, you're going to have to fight dirty, I'm afraid. I don't say you have to. I'm not suggesting you go around blackmailing people or getting the Gestapo or whatever. But I think the expression would be something like, they're useful idiots, so make use of them. So her enjoyment of seeing my misery had to come to an abrupt halt, and she had to do damage control and stop her own brother making things worse for her. So that was, from my point of view, two birds with one stone. That bought me some more time. So yeah, if there is a will, there is a way. And if there isn't one, you goddamn make sure there is one. You find a way. and you have to use your own with your own self-awareness. Use it in a way to realize that there are some things you aren't aware of. Might be a bit of an oxymoron, but you can't know. You're not infallible and know absolutely everything. So if you're struggling to find a solution, there's a good chance that there is one. There is a solution. It's just you haven't unearthed it yet. You need to be thinking outside of the box. You need to be thinking outside of in that prison that you call a cranium, your mind. And this is why I have a series on my channel called Survive the Mind. Because we're not careful. The mind plays tricks on us, like denial, like delusion. Which is why sometimes when you get to especially if you're in a scenario like I'm describing, where it's a survivalistic kind of life or death. I mean, maybe it's an exaggeration, maybe it's hyperbolic or something like that. But when you're in that kind of situation, I think it is pretty much life or death, in a psychological kind of way, at least. And I mean, progressing, when we move forward, once all this is behind us, there will be a grieving process involved. And so with that indicates that something has to die. And what that is will be your naivety, will be your innocence, will be this sort of the child that never got to be inside you. You have to lay it to rest. There is a kind of exception to that. It's not quite fatalistic, but especially your innocence and your naivety. You have to grieve that. You can't pretend to be dumb anymore when you know what's going on. Right. So let's move on, because I'm jabbering around quite a lot. And the idea of this extreme, fundamentally, is to light a fire under your ass. I wasn't sure if I was going to say ass or ass. Yeah, your ass, man. To light a fire under that ass. Recognize the danger of complacency and neglect. Do not allow yourself to be at the mercy of other people, because a part of you wants to. A part of you wants to know thyself. So recognize as a part of you, in likelihood, that wants to be a victim, that wants to have this learned helplessness and put your fate in other people's hands. And this isn't right, not just for you, but it's also not right for other people who are having to make the decisions of what your life is going to, how it's going to unfold, be it if they are a bad guy or a good guy. So this is a lesson, a little slight tangent here. For example, people get upset when they hear the idea of, like, you should forgive the narcissist. Like, preposterous. Why forgive the narcissist? Like, I don't mean forget what they've done, but you need to, with understanding. I guess the MGTOW bring this up now and again. It's like, we don't hate women, we just understand them. And it's that kind of idea where you understand, you forgive that they have compulsions, they have issues of their own, and to cut it kind of short, basically, to abuse people is a requirement of medicating their disorder. But where the real forgiveness is like, you say, I'm sorry, I gave the response. I hoped that I could give the responsibility of my self-care over to you. I hope that you would be my unicorn. I hope that you would give me my happiness. I hope that you would be the love of my life. I hope that you would make me feel complete or whole, or these kind of things. And that was wrong of me, because it's not your job to do that. Even if you're not a narcissist, any partner, if you're handing over your accountability, your responsibility to someone else to look after for you, then you realize that that's not right. It's not their duty or obligation to do that. So so with this knowing thyself, there's a lot of realizations. And again, we're going in a bit of a circle here. So remember what we said before about denial and delusions and maturity. I mean, these are parts of this growing process. If you've got a lot of things happening at the same time, I mean, it's going to make your head spin. You're going to be in a world of hurt, and it can be quite psychotic in a way. I remember thinking I was in the Twilight Zone, and that's probably putting it mildly. So you need to work out your flaws, your limitations. You need to outsmart yourself. You need to realize that you don't know everything, and you need to factor that in. Now, maybe you can get assistance to help cover these blind spots, and that's another part. Recognize your blind spots. And if you're in this sort of situation, you'll probably quickly realize that you've got huge blind spots, multiple blind spots. And obviously you don't have eyes on the back of your head. So you're going to need, if you're going to increase your awareness, you're going to need to address it somehow. You're going to need to look into things that you might not necessarily think need looking into, but you're not going to know if it's essential, if it's needed, unless you look. You can't just sort of fob it off and be like, nah, I don't need to know that. It's like, well, how do you know? Did you bother look? There might be something there. There might be the key to your situation might be there. The nugget of the golden nugget of information might be there, and you're going to be blasé and overlook it because you think you're so arrogant and that you think you know it all, and you know what you need to know. So in that sense, even though we talk about maturity, you actually, in tandem, you want to play into this idea. You want to see it also from the point of view of a child with curiosity. Be intrigued to find out. Maybe you might not have the right contextualization of what happened, but you got a gut feeling that something wasn't right about, like, maybe you had a memory. Something wasn't right. It's in my mind for some reason. I just haven't quite figured it out. Well, like the other things that you put in your back pocket, hold on to it. Maybe in time it would be revealed why it was significant, why it is that your mind has brought it into your memory. It's not for nothing. It's there for a reason. And this is the thing. A quick point about the mind as a unit, as a organ in the body. The mind isn't there. We might like to think the mind is hedonistic in a way. It enjoy life, enjoy what life has to offer, enjoy the world and all this sort of stuff. That's not the directives of the mind. We as humans, like, we didn't get a brain inside our skull to make us feel good. Feeling good for the sake of feeling good. I mean, you've got a brain to get your body to function in order for you to survive. So the brain is primary objective is to survive. Your mind, the way it's constructed, is to survive. Feeling good and enjoying life is part of that survival. And this is why your mind is the most potent tool or powerful weapon, and why abusive people want to capture it so badly. That is how you break a man. You take his mind. It doesn't matter about his bones, his body. It's his sanity, his reasons and principles, etc., that matter. So with that realization, you can start to move on to the next banner here. So be the change you are looking for. Kind of tied back to the first banner I had, where you let that hope die. You know, you're not looking for what's that song? I just need a hero. No, that's a different song, but it's the same. A hero song, you know, like I could be a hero, baby, or whatever. I could take away your pain. But yeah, like this idea, there's a hero inside you, the man inside you, the potential inside you, or what you could become, what you could be. None of these archetypes are ever going to exist if you are getting in the way of it, right? So you need to get out of the way of your own potential. In some ways, again, it's kind of like an out-of-body experience, or I like to describe it as putting the you that's thinking right now, the one that you're familiar with, the one that you've grown up with, put that guy asleep. You know, put him in a coma and unleash the beast, or unleash the shadow, or unleash the I don't know, the other side of you, that part of you that has been trying to get its voice heard, but you've been stifling all this time, not wanting to hear it because it was from your point of view, it was the bearer of bad news. This part of you is trying to tell you that, hey, stop living in a dream, and you've kept this guy shut away or locked up or whatever in shackles. Well, it's time to unleash that guy, and it's time for you, the one that's consciously thinking right now, to go to sleep, because obviously you being you the way you have been hasn't exactly been doing a good job, because you wouldn't be in this situation. So there needs to be an acknowledgement there that as in control as I would like to feel I am, I'm going to have to relinquish that control, at least for now, and let some other part of me have his turn to hopefully do better or whatever. Let's hope it's not a complete berserker animal. But in my situation, going back to my story, this worked in my favor because it meant, one, I wasn't going to be a problem in the way of myself, and two, it meant that my opponents no longer knew who they were dealing with, because I wasn't playing, or I wasn't conducting myself in the way I had been. They predicted I'd be crushed, I'd be destroyed, I'd be a pushover, I'd be compliant. Well, not anymore. Now I was defiant. Now I said no. Now I'd say things that would hurt back, or I'd fight back, punch back, you know. I wouldn't have to explain myself to them or feel guilty. I wasn't going to accept their shame. You take your bags and belongings and I'll leave it outside. You come and collect it and get the fuck out. You know, it must have been a shock for them. It was a shock for me as well. That's when you realize, wow, I didn't know I had it in me. like it's always been there. You've been suppressing it all this time. Now, I don't want people to be hard on themselves and think, geez, I'm a pussy. I'm a simp or something like that. No, it's you're young in mind. You know, there's nothing wrong with the idea of having an idealization, the idea of having harmony. It's actually it's an admirable trait. The idea to have compassion for people, the idea of having love and loyalty. There's nothing to be ashamed about for that. It's just we need to realize that as innocent these ideas are, there are prices attached to them. Like your freedom isn't free. You have to pay for your freedom. You have to fight for your freedom. You know, there is pain attached to your freedom. So harmony, peace, tranquility, fantastic. These are admirable qualities and desires to have. We just need to have a more realistic way of viewing them. And this is part of this process of lighting the fire under your ass. Because once you hit that, you've got that switch in your brain, survival mode, you have to fight, it's do or die, that kind of thing. You're going to quickly find out what it means to be free, what it means to have self-esteem, self-respect. Now you really will have a value attached to it. You might have thought you had a value, you might have thought you had a definition or a belief of what it means to you, but the thing is, what you lacked before was you didn't have any appreciation for it. So without that appreciation, you don't really know what the value is. But once you go through that kind of fire of hell and you see it through the other side, you're going to really know that pain wasn't for nothing. It meant something, and you're going to be grateful for having that pain. That's the kicker. This is where you'll probably start laughing at yourself, be like, Jesus, I can't believe I managed to do that. Like, how on earth did I do that? It's gonna feel kind of quirky. It's gonna feel like a dream, almost surreal, and it is in some ways, because it's not normal. It's not like every day you're lighting fires under your ass and do or die survivalistic mode. I mean, if it is, you've got some other kind of issues going on. So this is a rare, and this is why it's kind of like the fight of your life. It might happen a couple of times. There might be some other instances, but there'll never be one quite like the first one. And the idea is that you learn enough from it that it never happens again. So this is partly why they say, where it comes to abuse, psychological abuse is the worst form of torture that there is, because it's your mind, the most valuable asset you could possibly have. So be the change you are looking for. And with that, I didn't actually do a banner for it. Well, be your own best friend instead of your own worst enemy. And sometimes being your friend means not getting in your way. Like the idea of, if you want to help someone, don't help them. That's the best kind of help you can give someone. So if you want to be a friend to yourself, then don't be a friend to yourself. And I say, put them in a coma, put them asleep for now. They've been through so much. They need some rest. Let the other part of you do the hard work. because that idea of, you're being a friend to yourself. So you don't. This is why therapists don't give therapy to their friends, because you don't want that friendship to get in the way of things. Your friends will be catering to your feelings. Your friends don't want to hurt your feelings. So if you're being a friend to yourself, there's a good chance this friend in you is telling you things that aren't going to help you. They're trying to protect your feelings. So you don't need a friend like that around, as as even though it's part of you, etc. I don't want to say like you want to eject them out of your psyche, but I mean, you just realize like, no, I can't have this. This isn't going to help us as as an organism. So I'm going to kind of close it up soon. I don't know if anyone wants to bring any questions or comments. Let's have a quick look at the chat. If there's anything particular, I'm terrible. I'm sorry, guys. About, I mean, some of you streamers, YouTubers, whatever, you could read chats while chatting away, and you seem to do it seamlessly. I've yet to develop that skill. I see. Oh, Mr. Hemi 4Speed. Yes, hello, sir. Good to see you. Anyone else here? JR, good to see you, man. Hope you're all doing well, guys. Okay, so we'll begin. And Mr. Sammy, good to see you as well. Right. So we'll begin to wrap this up. Now, so back to the beginning then. Life is like a circle, eh? The circle of life. So we're going to see people more and more in despair. Don't be surprised by that. I mean, it's kind of funny when I listen to people's streams or have conversations with people and they're speculating, they talk with a kind of bewilderment, as if like they couldn't see it happening, or they're shocked to know that the world is collapsing almost. And then I wonder, okay, what are you going to do with this information? And it doesn't really seem to go anywhere. So to me, that just sounds like people are, because there's and I suppose understandably, I mean, it's a pretty unique situation. It's not like every day you find out that civilization is kind of crashing down around you. So like, how would you deal with that? How do you cope with that? And it's not a sudden collapse either. It's a gradual changes, just like how the tolerance to pain is a gradual conditioning. And these are kind of like red flags. So there is no more any time to waste. What are we pondering about, really? It's just fluffy words filling in empty, awkward silences. The time for action is now. None of us are getting any younger, right? So I'm just collecting some thoughts here. So I think it's a good time to, if in doubt, in a sort of subconscious kind of way, at least be doing something. Get the ball rolling in some way. Keep moving and try to avoid stagnation. So these are the quicksand or the tar pit to avoid of stagnation, and then you become rooted in your learned helplessness. And it's a very common trap. Many people experience it. Deep down, you know it's going on. And deep down, you know you need to be doing something about it. So really the time for thinking about it There is no need to think about it. You already know. Now's the time for shutty and get your ass into gear. You can think about it later. You can reflect upon it later. Keep a diary if it helps. Write out your thoughts. That's good. If you can't get your mind straight, you're trying to be pragmatic. You're trying to be logical, things like that, but you're struggling because your mind is all over the place, ruminating. You've got so much emotions. Then factor in some. Right, we're going to need some therapy through this, or we're going to need to have some meditation through this at some point. Maybe I can't do it right now, but afterwards I'm going to have to do it. For example, in my situation, while the chaos was going on and my conscience was in a comatose sort of state, taking a back seat, as it were, while I'm letting this stranger of my other side of myself operate the controls. I knew afterwards I would be exhausted. I'll be drained, as you can imagine. You've just been through boxing with Mike Tyson or whatever. You're beat up, and there's going to be some healing. And even that, I factored in, make sure I had defenses in place. I knew my ex's family wouldn't pursue me anymore, and I was able to have the space and freedom to start doing the healing, the recovery. And for a while in the beginning, I didn't know if who I was. I had a loss of sense of self. I had to work out what makes me happy, what makes me sad, what do I enjoy, what parts of me were mirroring other people, and what is actually my own interest and personality. And this is largely partly why I'm so interested in the psychology and philosophy, because, well, it's kind of like I find it fascinating, the inner workings of the mind, how complex and simplistic it can be, how dualistic. Anyway, so this is only the beginning of your freedom. It doesn't stop here. And what does it mean to be free? Is it in a literal kind of sense? To be able to go to any country you want? Is it the freedom financially to be able to buy anything you want? Is it the freedom to be able to say whatever it is you want? What does it mean to you? For me, it's the freedom of my mind. It's this conditioning, this self-doubt, or saying no to myself because I can't say no to other people. And so in that way, wherever it is I go, whatever it is I'm doing, I am free. And when I look at my daughter, it's something I hope to share with her, so that she doesn't have to feel like she is bound in any sort of way. Like, the way I see it is, abuse is very cyclic. It crosses generations. We already know that. Now, arguably, you could say I'm trying to break the cycle of abuse in my family line. However, I'm not free from it, but my daughter has a chance to be free. So, in that sense, freedom, my idea of freedom for her is to be free from the cycle of abuse. And I hope for each and every one of you, you reach your freedom. You fight for your freedom, whatever shape or form it might be. You know, it is worth it. You are worth it. Maybe you might not realize it or see it right now, but thinking about the monkey that climbed the tree to get the highest viewpoint, and he saw the heavenly glory of the sky and the surrounding treetops and the rest of the jungle, he wouldn't know what was up that tree unless he had put the effort in to try and climb it. Bearing in mind, the tiger is chasing him as well. I think actually the monkey's a little girl. But bear in mind that, yeah, if you don't know what I'm talking about, on my channel, the video, Little Monkey, go watch it. A children's story with a powerful message. So be good to yourselves. Be kind to yourself. Have appreciation and gratitude. But don't be complacent. Don't be pandering. Don't be cotton wool, bubble wrapping yourself. You know, oh, my little boo-boo and all this sort of stuff. No, you need some tough love. And no one better to give it to you than yourself. And I don't mean being a tyrant to yourself. I mean actually having some compassion. You know, be careful how the language you speak inside your mind, how you speak and articulate yourself matters. So be careful how you speak to yourself. You speak to yourself with respect, dignity. You know, even more so now than you've ever been in your life, because clearly many of you were not given that in younger years. And this is that self-parenting. So thank you very much. I'll leave it there, comrades. Take care. Stay strong.